You're listening to Inside the Hive, part of the Hornets on SI network, one podcast feed with multiple shows, making sure we cover the Charlotte Hornets from every single angle. If you like what you hear, please subscribe at Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. Hornets on SI is affiliated with the Fans First Sports podcast group. Today's show, we are less than 48 hours away from Charlotte Hornets basketball returning. It is the opening day of the NBA season. We are coming to you a little bit later than we normally do on a Tuesday, and I will explain why that is the case, and I'm fully responsible right now. But Sam, the season's here. It is right around the corner. I asked ChatGPT before we start recording how many days since the Hornets last played basketball. It said 361. That's not right. ChatGPT is still working out some bugs, but it's been a while. It's been 180-ish, I want to say. It's normally about 6 months, right? So it feels something like that. And I mean, by the end of this week, we're going to have multiple games to talk about on our next episode.
Man, like it basketball season felt like it snuck up on me. But now that the weather in Charlotte's a little cooler, it's like, all right, I think I'm ready for basketball now. Like it kind of hit me. Because preseason never felt real. Like real like it didn't feel like it's basketball was here. But now seeing what they're doing on social media and like I was like, all right, Mark, I think I'm ready. I think I'm here. I think I'm here for this. I'm excited.
Absolutely. I mean, like, even though the Hornets technically played in January, February, March, April, they didn't really. This team died when, LaMelo Ball and Mark Williams, I think, got injured within a week of each other. And like after that, what was left, that was not Charlotte Hornets basketball. That was an offensive basketball team, apart from a brief period after the trade deadline where they had some good players. And then they all got injured as well, right? So the Hornets fans have been waiting to see Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges on the court together. Still waiting to see Mark Williams. No update on that, interestingly. In fact, I imagine by the time this podcast is even out, it might even come out during the show. We'll have an update on Mark Williams' health. But they start on the road, season on the road to Houston, which I think is going to be a tough game. Houston team's got a lot of talent, and some guys over there just got paid heavily in the last 48 hours. Yeah, Alper and Şengün too. A lot of money being handed out in Houston. But that is not the focus of today's show. Hornets and Heartbreak are going to be having your reactions to the Hornets' first game of the season later this week. We'll be talking about whatever storylines emerge by the next time we speak, which will be next Monday evening. But we're going to talk about 10 increasingly bold season predictions. And even if you're listening to this after the season started, after the first game, these predictions, these are going to be evergreen, right? This is going to be a show that will last. Don't think that, the first game's happened, this episode isn't relevant to me now. This will be. And we have come up with 5 predictions each. And we've then, workshopped to come up with a joint 10 list ranking from 1, which is the least bold prediction, to 10, which we think is the most bold of our predictions. And we're going to run through these in order from 1 to 10 on today's show. Sam, how did you find thinking about this little exercise?
It's honestly, you try to find the balance between being positive and being realistic. I don't say negative because my negativity is surrounded in realism. And, not with games the fact that games haven't been played yet, you're allowed that room for optimism before like results and like data starts rolling in. It's interesting to think about it. So mine aren't. I'm not here to shit on anybody's parade. If you're excited about the season, I'm excited for you. But I think this list is pretty realistic, even as we get into the bold stuff.
Yeah. Let's jump right in then. Number 1, and this is one of mine. The Charlotte Hornets will finish no higher than 24th in defense and 15th in offense. What was your reaction when I first sent that one over and what you thought? Did you think, yeah, that sounds right? Did you think something jumped out to you there? That is what I think is probably my least bold prediction.
It sounds like Hornets basketball. You know, like that, the Hornets DNA, hive culture, whatever they want to throw around. Like exciting, up tempo offense and less than stellar defense is like what we've become accustomed to watching Charlotte Hornets basketball. So it'd be in line with where this team had its greatest success post Kemba, right? And yeah, that'd be pretty standard, right? Back to where we were before all of the injuries and everything tanked the seasons, or those past 2 seasons at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year they were 29th and 30th in these two categories. So this would be like a massive jump. Like, in fact, I can guarantee if I were to speak to people around the NBA who cover the league as a whole, if I said this, they'd probably think I'm like high on the Hornets. And I think there'll be some people listening to this going like, what? No, they're going to be a top 10 offense. LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, etc. But look, I'm going to break it down for you. I've gone through and I will tell you every team that I think we're better in. And then also some that I think are questionable. So I think defensively, I think there are 3 teams I will say that we will be better than. And that's the Washington Wizards, Detroit Pistons, and Chicago Bulls. I then think we are in the same ballpark with the Kings, the Utah Jazz, and the Brooklyn Nets from a defensive point of view. Okay. And that's kind of why I went 26th, because like even if we're the best of that, 24th in defense, even if we're the best of that group, like that would mean that's where we rank. Because this Hornets roster just does not have a great deal of defensive talent. And Mark Williams, people hope he is the guy to clean up a lot of those messes, but like he didn't show it last year when he did play and he was healthy. Like he was not the defensive anchor. I think people thought he was. He was actually much better offensively than I think many people thought, and a very good rebounder. But he wasn't a game-changing, rim protector at the time. In fact, his rim protection stats weren't great last year. So that's the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, I feel pretty good about being better than Washington, Detroit, Brooklyn, and Portland. I then think we're in this group of teams which are Memphis, Utah, Toronto, Orlando, Miami, which are kind of a mix of like very good defensive teams who will have questionable offenses, and then kind of like some rebuilding-ish teams with some talent, probably similar to Charlotte in Utah and Toronto. And now what this doesn't capture is like the injured teams. There'll just be 1 or 2 teams that get stricken by injuries, just like the Hornets were last year, and will be terrible. That's not captured here, but that's kind of where I feel we are at. And like being a league average offense with this team, I do think would be a success, even if it's not the height of like the top 5 offense they were in the James Borrego, PJ Washington at center, Terry Rozier, LaMelo Ball lineup times. I think the league is just deeper, more talented now, and there was a lot of kind of noise in those seasons around some of the play style that influenced that.
And I think that'd be a super solid step forward, right?
Yeah.
Jeff Peterson, the owner, is like they've been preaching like this. I don't want to say a process because that didn't coined by the Philadelphia 76ers. Like this is not what's happening in Charlotte, but like lowercase p process instead of the branded process that they were doing. Like it's a process, and this year is gonna be step 1 towards hopefully sustained success. But getting to a point where you have a real identity, where you are a competent offense, and at least. And then not the worst defense, that is a positive step forward, even if it's not that grand of a step.
Yeah. And I can tell you, Charles Lee is higher than 24th. Yeah. Like Charles Lee his focus is defense. He will probably be hoping for a top 15 defense. If he can get anything higher than like 20th in defense, that is a great coaching job by Charles Lee this year. Like we must remember these things. There'll be a lot of noise that happens in the season. But if they finish above like 24th, 23rd, 22nd defensively, he's overperformed at this talent level. And that is a great sign because Steve Clifford was a well-respected defensive coach and he could not get defensive consistency out of this team for 2 years in a row, even with the injuries.
Yeah, and like you're looking at the roster, all right, who are going to be the defensive-minded players? Like you got Josh Green and then you got Cody Martin.
And that's it.
You got a new guy and a hurt guy. That's not a lot to build on. So I agree with you. I think being a not the worst defense is like legitimately, and like with no sarcasm, a positive step forward and something they could really build on. And then again, like we'll talk more about this later. But going back, I want to keep going back to the idea of this year being a filling out process for the rest of the roster around your LaMelo or Brandon Miller to see which guys fit best with the star players on the team.
Yeah. And you mentioned Brandon Miller there. He's the guy who I maybe think could be the third best defender. I'm interested to see it this year. I think I was very high on his defense at Alabama. I was high on it to the start last year, and then it basically disappeared as the season went how it did. If he can bring it defensively this year, then that does give them increased upside. He's a guy who I'm kind of not quite sure what to count on defensively yet, but he's certainly talked a big game this year about wanting to take charges, be a lockdown two-way guy. He's saying the right things. Let's see if it follows through.
Exactly.
Sam, give us number 2, our next increasingly bold prediction.
My guy. My guy, Tejan Salon. Never doubted him for a second. Will record at least one double-double this NBA season. This team will be in games where there be opportunities for points and boards. Salon, through preseason, has shown that the shot can click, and he hustles his ass off, and he can get rebounds. And I think, not saying he's going to average a double-double, but don't be surprised if at some point this season, he may get like 10 minutes and 10 points or something like that. But like an actual double-double, no, he won't average that. Salon will put up and fill up a box score and have one of those nights at some point this year.
So the first thing I wanted to do with this one was joke and be like, I agree for the Greens for Swarm. But no, I actually do agree with you, though. I agree. I think he'll do it for the Charlotte Hornets. Like, there'll be a game where everyone's injured or towards the end of the season when they're playing young guys. He plays the game so hard that he's just going to go out there and steal 10 rebounds one night. And he's aggressive enough offensively that he'll have the points. I completely agree if he gets the minutes. The question I think is interesting is what month does it come in? Because the double-double in December means more than a double-double in March. It just does. Unless they're pushing for the playoffs. Like I know it doesn't look different on paper, but you speak to anyone around the NBA, the league, how these things work. By March, I mean, veteran guys are taking the foot off the gas. They're ramping down, getting ready for playoffs. In December, everybody's trying to kill everybody, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the interesting thing to me is when it is most likely to come. Because I agree with you, it's going to happen, and we will mark this point when it does. We will come back and go, remember this podcast.
And I want to make it a point to praise this young man because I'm a believer, and I still don't like the draft pick. That's never not going to change because that's how I felt in the moment, and I'm locked in there. But as time has gone on, I see the light. The Salon light. And I think you're right. It's going to come probably in 2025, late 2025. Is for NBA season purposes, not next year. That'd be awful if it took.
It's like a JT Thor 25-12 against the Cavaliers in the last game of the season, right? Yeah, that's like why he finished the end of the.
Or so, when you play these teams and they're tanking for seeding, like they don't want to play the Celtics or whatever, so they throw a game. Maybe one of those types. But Salon's gonna put up some points this season at some point, and it's gonna be fun to watch.
I'm curious because we weren't podcasting together when the draft happened. Who was the guy you had circled for the Hornets if it wasn't Salon?
It was two. It was Castle or Klingon. If both were there, it was Castle. But I wanted that secondary ball handler and perimeter guy that could play lockdown defense, or the Mark Williams insurance. That would be a potential upgrade over Nick Richards. Like if they draft the Klingon, my fantasy booking was you draft Klingon, trade Nick Richards, so you have Mark and Donovan to choose from. I would never play them at the same time, but it's like you have your front court depth kind of sorted for the next hopefully 5 to 8 years.
I was right there with you. On my best available big board, Klingon was my top ranked guy as well. So depending how the season goes, that might not be the last time that we both bring that up. But let's hope it is. Let's hope we bury that one. I'd love nothing more. Okay, number 3. Getting a little bit spicy now. The Hornets will have 0 All-Stars. Okay. The only current All-Star on the roster is LaMelo Ball. He was an injury replacement. And he has not been an All-Star for the last 2 years due to injuries. I'm going to give you a list of names, and these are guys who I am writing in kind of Sharpie for All-Stars, Sam. And they are Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Donovan Mitchell, Halliburton, Giannis, Trae Young, Jimmy Butler, and Banchero. Any of those guys you think won't be an All-Star this year, or like are less than 50% likely?
I mean, unless barring injury, no.
Okay.
No, because I think a lot of those guys are all NBA guys too. So it's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
That means there is one All-Star spot left for a potential Charlotte Hornet. So that would be LaMelo Ball or Brandon Miller. And these are other names that I didn't even say there. That means that Ball and Miller will be fighting for that one spot between Scotty Barnes, Paul George, Karl Towns, Zach LaVine, Jarrett Allen, Cade Cunningham, Pascal Siakam, Damian Lillard, Bam Adebayo, Franz Wagner. Now, yes, there will be 1 or 2 injuries, right? One of those guys might not have a good season. One of them might get injured. Like, even in that other group, there might be 2 or 3 spots available. But it is just it's easy to say in your mind, oh, there'll be an All-Star. Like, this is not the time when Kyle Korver and Jeff Teague made the All-Star team. Right. The league is a lot more talented now. Yeah. And I just think the odds are most likely stacked against Charlotte this year because their record, I don't think, will be the thing that will be used as a tiebreaker, right?
Yeah, because I know LaMelo if anybody does it, it would be LaMelo, in my opinion. But and I know LaMelo gets a lot of attention, but if the Hornets aren't playing on national television, if they aren't playing well as a team, I doubt anybody's gonna get the nod to get into the All-Star game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. God, the East is deep.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like, genuinely.
If you put together a team of the non-All-Star players there, you could have Damian Lillard at point guard, Paul George at shooting guard, Scotty Barnes at the 3, Karl Towns at the 5, and like Franz Wagner. I mean, that's like an NBA championship contender. Yeah. And none of them are even going to be All-Stars. It's crazy.
It's hard out here. And I think this is why the NBA is going to add some more teams. That and money. But yeah, they could the distribution of talent could use a little spreading.
Yeah. And again, like if the Hornets do get an All-Star, even if it was like an injury replacement, you're still going to be beating out some serious names to get that status there this year. So, okay. Yeah. Let's move on to number 4. Hit us with our number 4 and our increasingly bold predictions.
The good vibes will be gone by November 2nd.
This is one of mine.
Just for the folks listening, they don't have the schedule in front of them.
Yeah.
That includes away at Houston, at Atlanta, home Miami, home Toronto, home Boston, at Minnesota. Oh, that's it. The Boston back-to-backs. So that's
the first 6 games.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. Yes.
So fans do this thing every year. Like you said at the start, the preseason, the media day, all the positive PR promotion, they all talk themselves into it. This year, I actually think they're going to be better than I thought. Like if you ask any fan base how they think they'll be in, I don't know, May or June next year, you can always add 5 wins on by the time you get to October. Yeah. When nothing, a lot of time changes. People say things like, it can't be worse. It'll be more fun to watch. But that is a tough start to the season. I think it is realistic from those 6 games that the Hornets could be 1-5, 2-4. Like, I actually think 2-4 is probably likely.
I see Toronto. Who's the other? Who do you think they get the win against? Or just
I would probably say I'd probably say Miami, actually.
Okay.
I think they played Miami pretty well over the years. I mean, ATL, Atlanta, they're going to be playing. It's going to be their second game for the season against the Hornets, and their first game they're going to be playing the Brooklyn Nets, who I imagine they'll beat, so they'll be confident. Yeah, but I think it'll be tough. Like, I think they could win any of those games because early in the season, just like weird stuff does happen. Like, I'm not ruling them out. Even Boston, I'm not ruling it out. There are always weird results. Even like the process Sixers, I think I want to say start of the season like 4-3 or 5-5 before they were like a disaster.
Well, that's why I brought up Boston because it's a back-to-back in a homestand, Friday, Saturday night. I don't know who Boston plays afterwards, but I look at Boston as a team, especially with Porzingis. They'll be looking for opportunities to rest guys, and it's that Jason Tatum quote like that. Well, it's not a Tuesday night in Charlotte, whatever he said, but it's and then Charlotte has the Boston guys here. Like there's a lot of
people should boo him. People should boo Tatum so hard. They should let them know that they heard that comment. Like if I was a fan in the building, that's what I would do. I would go, I know what Jason Tatum said about us. And for those who don't know, he basically was on a podcast or interview somewhere, wasn't he, Sam? And he was talking about like it's not like he was basically disparaging Charlotte, saying like it's a Tuesday night in Charlotte where like the fans don't turn up and no one cares, and it's mostly Boston fans in there anyway. It was something of that nature, right?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. There's also like I think Luka should be booed. I forget who. Do you remember when JJ Redick was like heavily linked to the Hornets job?
I do.
And Luka and I think someone else on the Mavericks was like to JJ, "You going to Charlotte?" Like there's kind of giving him shit. So that should not be forgotten. Neither and the guy who hurt LaMelo that one year when LaMelo stepped on that fan's foot like a couple years ago.
Yep.
I think that's the list for me. But yeah. No, yeah, Jason Tatum was talking crazy. And now with Charles Lee in here and Grant Williams in the mix.
Yeah. And look, I could
some good narrative.
Even if they're 3-3, I can tell you right now, there'll be there'll be accounts out there going, why isn't T-John Salon in the rotation?
Yeah.
Why does Grant Williams and Cody Martin look like they're off the pace? Where's Mark Williams? This team's always hurt. Why is this new coach using this rotation? Why isn't Trey Mann playing more minutes? Why is he not closing instead of Josh Green?
The Nick Richards hate. You can hear it now.
The Nick Richards. I can tell what these strands are going to be already. And it just takes a little bit of stress and frustration for those to like come out firing. And I can just see it already. It's going to be, everyone be going, oh, why do we all get our hopes up? And I'll say like, there are some accounts out there like spewing out, like in my eyes, overly positive content, which I think for like those who engage less and see that, they will be getting they'll be setting an unrealistic expectation for the season. And then those will be the same people who fire back and get angry and frustrated because they were led to believe they were going to be better and they're not. Mm-hmm. And that's what damages the team is like when there is, I don't know, I think a lot of times it's people who are younger who've maybe not seen this 5 iterations of Hornets rebuilds and know how they go, like who just believe automatically because people are a year older, they will be better. And I think we've been around long enough to know that's just not how it always works out. They will be better, but will they be better enough to please everyone? Probably not.
Yeah, and if anyone is like super positive about it, I would just ask them to say who the backup small forward is on this team, and then ask them again if they're still super positive about the situation.
Okay. Number 5. Trey Mann will average 15 points per game. I'm going to put this in perspective. Last year, Sam, 2 players in the NBA averaged 15 points per game coming off the bench for most of the season. Here's a little trivia time. Sam, can you name them?
Our guy, Malik Monk.
Yes, that is one. 15.4 points.
Naz Reid. Did Naz Reid get up there?
Oh, he might have started too many games in my statistical qualifier, but that's actually a good one. I will look into that. That's a great shot. I'll look into that.
Just because he won 6 man, all right. I just my mind went there. Who's the other guy?
He was 13.5 points in as read, so he didn't quite qualify. The other one, Bogdanovich, 16.9 points per game for the Atlanta Hawks.
16.
Led the leagues in scoring off the bench. This was one of yours, Sam. Take us away with the Trey Mann love.
Well, this is not gambling advice, but I did put some money on Trey Mann, 6-man. Just something a little extra to root for the guy.
Can I just throw in an Easter egg here? At the end of the podcast, I want to discuss some prop bets ahead of the Houston game, which, again, it is me discussing them with you. It is not gambling advice. But if anyone wants to tune in, we'll talk about this once we're done with the 1 to 10 ranking, because there's some very interesting stuff out there.
Oh, let's do it. Because gambling became legal in March in North Carolina. And that made the end of the Hornet season extra fun. Betting the other team and taking the over, dog. Anyway, I'm glad. That's no reason I'm glad basketball's back. But no, I put 15 in there. Because it's lofty. I want to aim high for Trey Mann. He averaged 12 with Hornets last year. I think he's gonna have a lot more opportunity. In this time around, I'm also banking on what he did in preseason, carrying out. I think he will legitimately will be the 6th man on this team, and not saying anyone's gonna get hurt, but people get hurt on this team, and I think Trey is the prime candidate to fill up the points column in anybody's absence. So that's why I have that out there. I think Trey is a sleeper for a breakout year within the team in general. But I think Trey's going to have a nice season and put up some big nights and really be that go-to guy, potentially the new Malik Monk, that spark plug off the bench, making the fire in the crowd like Salon does.
Make the fire in the crowd.
Charlotte, Hornets, make a t-shirt, please. Have they not made a t-shirt about that? Because they have to. They got to. I would buy 3 of them.
They're waiting for the first T-John Salon double-double before they do. That must be what it is.
Bring him back when they retire his number, then they'll do the shirts then. Everyone get in the building and get to make a fire in the crowd.
There's a couple of paths to this. I think this is like the fact that only 2 players did it last year makes you think, well, this has to be really bold. But like, I think it's very realistic, and this is the reason why. There is a path that Trey Mann closes games for this team instead of Josh Green. He's not going to start, but there is a path that, like, towards the end of the game, NBA coaches generally have their best offensive unit on the floor, and I think there's an argument to say that Trey Mann is in that unit with Ball, Bridges, Miller, and Mark Williams or Nick Richards. So he could get extra minutes there and get extra shots. Like you said, if Ball goes down injured, and I also think like he was 12 points per game last year. Yes, he kind of started a lot, but he was playing as like a connective passer / scorer last year. This year, I think his assist rate is going to go way down and his shot attempt is going to go way up, like per minute. And that change in role, I think, is going to be conducive to this figure. So look, the Hornets didn't give him the contract extension. We know that now, recording today. We didn't know yesterday. We talked about this on our previous episode. I think we both think that was the right thing to do, even if we've both been impressed by Mann in preseason. And I liken this a little bit to Dwayne Bacon. Right, we're going back here. This is back, I think, before you moved to Charlotte. There was a year, I think it's maybe like 2019, where Dwayne Bacon, who's a 2nd-round pick, the Hornets fan base didn't know who was going to lead the team in scoring, and he like got the most votes from fans in a poll I did to lead the team in scoring, and he was out the league in a year. And it was one of those where there was all this like he had a good end of the season before, he had a great summer, and then it just like never ever translated. And I think that's why the Hornets didn't pay Trey Mann. They didn't want another Dwayne Bacon. Like, let's wait and see it. Let's let him realize the potential before we just start like handing out guaranteed money for over, 3-4 years for it. So tying it in a little bit here with the contract stuff, but if he averages 15 points per game, he will be in the conversation for 6th man of the year. He will get votes if he achieves. It's realistic. if Ball stays healthy, because otherwise he could start.
Yeah, and I'm also kind of sprinkling in if some other pieces get moved from the team, if there's some trades with the Hornets, move on from some guys. I think Trey Mann is a guy they prioritize keeping. That's part of it as well, hopefully. But yeah, if some other players get traded, more opportunities for Trey Mann.
All right. Next one up. Over to you.
Is it me? All right. So the Charlotte Hornets do not make the play-in. And just for the record, or the playoffs. Just want to throw that in. Just if anyone's thinking of doing the semantics game, they're not finishing top 6 either. And it's fine. Yeah. It's fine. I promise it's fine if they don't make the play-in. Like, it's probably better because they're going to get smoked by anybody they play in the playoffs. If it's Boston, New York, or whomever, it's a problem.
And they keep the pick.
Yes, and they keep their pick if they don't make the playoffs, right? So
I will say next year, if they don't make the play-in, it's not fine. Do you agree with that?
100%. 100 million%. Because like that. Also, I want to give grace to Charles Lee as a first-time head coach, saying this man has to take this team to the playoffs or play in and be in that conversation is I think is unrealistic. It's wishful thinking, but he is a first-time head coach, despite how well regarded he is. We don't know how he's going to manage a team for 82 games. Charlotte, I think, seems destined. Their ceiling is the 11 seed, and I think that'd be a fantastic season if they can end the season with knowledge of who is the best fit around LaMelo and Brandon Miller, because then they can identify what they need to target in the draft and free agency in the trade market, move on from guys that aren't the best fit. Hypothetically saying, let's say Mark Williams isn't the best fit for what they want to do, right? Maybe they find an opportunity to move on from him because they want a different type of center. Maybe they want someone who can stretch the floor more, open up more lanes for LaMelo to drive through. Like, hypothetical, right? But there are questions that we don't know the answer to because of the injury issues from LaMelo and Mark especially. But for me, as a fan, I want the season to end, the Hornets to play moderately competitive basketball, right? Finish with the 11th seed in the East. Just have a little lottery ticket. Just a small lottery ticket. You don't need anything crazy because the draft lottery, anything can happen. Like Atlanta, with 3% chance with the first, like, you just want to be in the mix. You never know. If they can keep it, add a quality role players / starter through the draft with maybe a top 7 pick, maybe, who knows? And then you're off. They can make cap space. They'll have cap space. Like, they can make something happen. And so, yeah, I think they're just below the cutoff for a play-in team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I have them ahead of Brooklyn, Washington, probably for sure, those two teams. Then after that, I think they're in the mix of like Detroit, Chicago, and the Hornets. That's kind of where I have them. And then I think they're probably like a tier below that next grouping of teams, whether it be Miami, Orlando, Indiana, Atlanta, probably as well, maybe in the similar areas there. But I want to go back to what you said about Charles Lee. Mm-hmm. Can we give him some grace as a first-time head coach? I remember when I had Jordan Schrenkamp, the old Greens for Swarm head coach, on this very podcast, and he was like, he talked about his first year being a head coach, and he was like, I didn't really feel like comfortable in my own skin as a head coach until my second year. Like, and that is very common that you hear from a lot of head coaches say that. And then the other thing, this is a tenuous plug here, but stay with me. I was chatting to the former men's GB field hockey coach. So head coach for GB field hockey team, Bobby Critchley is his name. Took him to the Olympics, won medals at the Olympics with Team GB. He said, it was really interesting. He went from assistant coach to head coach of GB. And he said, I went from 80% coaching to 20% other stuff as an assistant coach to 20% coaching, 80% other stuff as head coach. Because as head coach, you're managing people. You're handling recruitment of your coaching staff. You're doing schedule. You're working with your operations logistics. You're answering to your CEO, to your board. And that is a shift that takes time. It's a completely different skill set. It's bonkers, really, how we do it this way. Yeah. That like the head coach, you have to do all the media stuff, right? They get pulled in every direction. It is a completely different skill set you need for a head coach in some ways than you do as an assistant coach. And that assistant job does not always prepare you the right way from it. And that's why we see so many assistant coaches who don't make it in the NBA. It's easy to be the assistant coach when you're not the guy making the decision of who sits down on a bench and who doesn't, which the head coach ultimately makes, and players will hold them accountable. So let's give Charles Lee some grace period this year. He is an extremely young coach, and he's a first-time head coach. You can't just be treating him. You've got to give him some opportunity to find himself as a coach, and this is perfect year for that.
And that's why I was so excited for James Borrego to potentially be hired by the Lakers, because I think he did some really nice things here, and I know he learned a lot from his experience here, and I think wherever he lands next, I think he'll kill it. I really do. I think he'll kill it. And so, yes, just allow Charles Lee to cook for a year, see what kind of basketball he rolls out, what he can learn himself. There's a lot of learning going on this season, and he's a part of it as well. And I like the hire. I'm not anti Charles Lee, but yes, let's be patient.
And again, this is a completely new staff under Charles Lee.
Yeah.
This is not like when Steve Clifford brought back like Bob Bayer and like all his coaches that had been with him in Orlando who had, a decade of working together essentially. The staff that Charles Lee's put together, some of them might have coached with each other before, but like this is not like it's a group that has been together coaching at another team and they're now just moving to the Hornets. It's a completely new group. And that is also going to take time for them to find themselves, find their voice, figure out how that works. So it's going to require a little bit of patience. All right, let's move on. Number 7. Okay. Getting into the heavy stuff now. Nick Richards, Vasilicic, both to be traded. I believe this one is one of yours. I can see where the logic is of, like you said earlier, sell off some of your veteran players towards the trade deadline. Simultaneously, you make your team a little bit worse to protect that draft pick. You free up some playing time for the young players, and you also get future draft capital, which this new front office have already shown a real priority to do. And I'd say for Nick Richards and Micic, you could probably get like maybe a late first for Nick Richards, depending how desperate the center market is. If not, probably like a couple of good seconds and maybe a second or two for Micic. That is kind of the going rate. And this front office has shown that they would probably do that for that kind of value right now if it goes how we think. Have I missed anything on your thoughts, or are we on the same wavelength there?
Oh, exactly. And then we already seen this, I think 2 centers, Hartenstein and didn't New York lose a center? And Precious went down.
Precious gone down with a hamstring, but he's got Mitchell Robinson out. They've got Mitchell Robinson out long term.
So like
till
centers are already dropping, right?
Yeah.
We lost Mark Williams already. So like there's gonna be opportunity to move on from Nick at some point if they wanted to. He's making $5 million this year, $5 million next year.
Such a good contract.
It's such a bargain, right, for a backup center. So like there should be opportunity for that. And then Micic, same thing. More of a heftier price tag, but I believe next year is a club option, a team option for him. So you only have to really pay him this year if you don't want to pay him the $8 million next year. So I think they're both prime candidates to be moved this season before the deadline because they do offer value as far as on the court contributor, but also because they're pretty economical. And yes, to your point, there can be draft picks coming back the other way.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I think the reason I think this is quite bold is I think one of them will be traded. Whether they both will be, I guess the thing that's interested. And we're going to get into one of mine later, which might be even a little bit spicier than this. But these are, I can completely see this being the case. But we will have to see. Number 8.
All right. LaMelo Ball will finish top 3 in 3-pointers. Brandon Miller will finish top 10 in 3-pointers made per game. We're going to, offense, going back to the first point,
Mm-hmm.
Offense is going to be, we're going to be back, at least kind of back. And I know with like the NBA league rule changes, like the whistle swallowing that kind of went on post deadline and put a curb on some scoring, but that's not LaMelo's game, getting to the line, like really scamming and scumbagging it to the free throw line. That's not LaMelo's thing. I wish it was.
He gets a terrible whistle. He gets a pretty awful whistle, LaMelo Ball. I think that's, we were all pretty clear with that.
And then like Brandon Miller, that's not really part of his game either. But I think shooting threes will definitely be part of their games. And that's been an emphasis from Charles Lee as well, at least verbally.
Absolutely. Charles Lee philosophy systems he come from with the Bucks and with the Celtics shot a ton of threes. And I'm going to give you some stats. In 22-23 season, okay, Steph Curry had 4.9 threes per game he made. Klay Thompson was at 4.4. Damian Lillard was at 4.2. LaMelo Ball was at 4.0. So he finished fourth in the NBA, 22-23, in 3-point makes per game. Donovan Mitchell was next at 3.6. Last season, Ball, like, it was a strange season. He played such a short amount of time. But Curry was at 4.8. Doncic then at 4.1. CJ McCollum at 3.6. And Dante DiVincenzo at 3.5. So if LaMelo Ball just repeated what he did in 22-23, where he made 4 threes per game, he would have finished third last year. And I think that is going to go up, because I actually think, like, some of what I've seen in preseason, I think his shot might have even got more versatile in terms of hitting it more on movement and from deeper. Yeah. I think this coaching staff is going to empower him to take more threes. And if that is the case, and he plays enough games, it wouldn't even shock me. If you look at those other names like Klay Thompson, CJ McCollum, like, these are guys who are getting older. Even Steph Curry, he's human, people. He's even getting older too. It would not shock me if LaMelo Ball is towards the top of the NBA at some point this year in 3-pointers made per game.
Yeah, and especially if he has opportunities off the ball too. Like, if he can get some catch and shoot stuff up,
yeah,
that could create more opportunities as well as Brandon Miller's handle develops.
Yeah, and for Brandon Miller, I had it top 10. Last year, Brandon Miller was 39th in 3-pointers made per game with 2.5. If you look towards the post All-Star break, basically, of kind of when he took on more of the reins as the primary time, he was up at 3.2 per game, which would be top 10 in the league. So you're telling me that basically he has to make half a three more per season, which I think, judging by, again, preseason, seeing how many threes he's shooting, Charles Lee, Miller are talking about how they're taking more threes, less mid-range. You're telling me he's make half a three more to finish in the top 10 for 3-pointers made per game? I mean, I know this sounds wild, especially for like an offense which I predicted will be outside of the top 15 offenses. But I think these specific two areas for these specific two players, I think they could be the best high volume 3-point shot making pair since Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. I think there's a lot of other issues, but if we're talking about that one thing, I think these two could be pretty special in that area.
Yeah, I mean, and for nothing else, let's pretend the team doesn't have the greatest season, and they're playing from behind a lot. Again, like, a lot of opportunity from three in games where they're trying to get back into games. So with that lens, yeah, I think that's very well within reason. And honestly, do it. Like, put the ball, like, let it fly. Absolutely let it fly. I'm so here for it. Like, I want that type of basketball back. I think
LaMelo Ball is 40-1 to lead the league in 3-pointers made per season. The reason those odds are so good is probably because of his health.
Yeah. Because
to qualify for NBA for these type of statistical categories, you need to play X number of games, and that is the big disaster. That is the big worry, right, with LaMelo. But if he can stay healthy, then I think he's going to be right here on this.
Oh, for sure.
Number 9. This is my last one, and this was my boldest one, and your boldest one is number 10.
Yeah.
one of Grant Williams or Miles Bridges is traded before next season. And these are two big names, right? Grant Williams is probably one of the leaders of this team and has only just been acquired and had a really good half season with Charlotte last year. That was kind of like lost in the terrible basketball post All-Star break, but he was very good. And Miles Bridges has just been re-signed this summer and has a great connection and friendship with the Hornets franchise player, LaMelo Ball. To move either one of them this season kind of feels strange to say out loud. But when you look at the details, it just kind of feels like it could happen. You've got Bridges, Williams, and now you've got Tijon Salone, all playing the same position at power forward. You've got 48 million committed to the power forward position out of like 141 million cap. That's like over a third of your total salary committed to one position. And Bridges was re-signed to a declining contract. It is very tradable in the current economic climate. And it just wouldn't shock me if at some point, if a good deal came along with a first round pick for either of these players, that they decided to cash in, especially if Salon is ahead of schedule, like we think he might be from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because we're saying during the season or off season, just before next season tips off, correct?
I did tweak this to say traded before next season to include the draft and free agency, where I think there could be more room for maybe moving it rather than just the trade deadline.
Because let's say, the Hornets have an opportunity to draft a really sick power forward, not saying any names, but then we look at Miles Bridges and Grant Williams as pretty expendable at that point.
Yep.
But looking at this, I'm like, looking at the roster outside of LaMelo and Brandon Miller, right? Who on the team would bring the greatest return, like player caliber wise or draft pick wise? It's Bridges, right? Like Bridges probably the who
no
say?
Mark Williams.
Mark Williams? You think Mark Williams? I don't know.
I don't think any of them are great. That's
right.
If I'm being really honest. Like right now, speaking today, I don't think any of those guys are brilliant value players. Because they're either talented but they've got injury issues, or they've got questionable histories. Like I just think there'll be some teams in the NBA that just wouldn't ever consider trading for Miles Bridges because of the perception and the public backlash to fans. But we just have no idea to know who those teams are.
Right.
So that limits your market, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But I agree, he's in the conversation. I would agree Miles Bridges is in the conversation.
And that plus him being a clutch guy, I think puts him at the top for me, the guy that we could get the most for. Until Mark Williams puts together like 20 straight games of like consistent basketball, I think it's Bridges. But I get the Williams part, especially being on a rookie contract. So to that end, if a minor reset button was pressed, I think you're gonna get the biggest haul for Bridges. Grant is a weird one because when you look at how Dallas shook their situation up, they gave up a first round pick to get PJ back in the other way. Now I do think PJ is a better player than Grant, but it's like what's a realistic return for Grant Williams? I don't know. I don't do the expiring contract game and get like a pick swap in return. I feel like that's about where you would land in a Grant Williams deal.
I think it would be probably a seconds. You're talking multiple seconds,
which is fine with me.
Unless there's like a player as well, but like I would say salary filler and like a good second or multiple seconds, maybe 2 or 3.
Because I like the Jeff Peterson special of just taking money on, getting a bunch of seconds. I like that because we're seeing what you can do with a grouping of second round picks, and it's a neat little strategy they've been running through this year until this team has a real like plan and identity of like what they want to do moving forward. Being a second round pick merchant isn't the worst thing in the world because it allows you that flexibility to cash them in later, especially if you're going to lose two.
It was a Mitch Kupchak phrase: was the second round picks are a good currency. in the NBA, right? And that's what they are basically.
Yeah, like so. Yeah.
All right, number 10, final one. Do you want to hit us with it?
Let's do it. Brandon Miller will have more than one, 40-point scoring games this season. And my rationale was
this is hot. This is hot. Spit. It's it's fire.
His career high was 35.
That's right.
Game high
against
last
the
year.
Indiana Pacers.
And everybody could score against the Pacers. So like there's that. But I think he's gonna get a lot of looks. And I don't until LaMelo puts together a strong stretch of availability. I look at Brandon Miller as the best player who's going to play the most. And as the best player who's going to play the most, he's going to put up points. And in games where you're going to need someone to turn to, I think it's going to be him more often than not. And so Brandon Miller expanding his range, developing in year 2, was going to put him up. It's going to really put him up this year.
So you did pretty well in the first trivia time I threw on you. This might test you a little bit more. Which players in their second year have had multiple 40-point games? I will tell you there are 7 in the history of the NBA.
Oh,
7 players in their second year with multiple 40-point games. Now, what this doesn't take into account is how the NBA has changed in recent years and become more offensively, with pace and spacing. But you have 7 players to guess. You can fire away here and see how many you can get.
All right, I'm gonna go till I miss. All right, because I don't want feelings hurt. All right, I'm going Derrick Rose.
Incorrect.
All right, I'm out.
You're done. You're out. LeBron.
Okay.
Luka.
Yep.
Durant. AI. Shaq. Jordan. And Kobe. And that's the list. So if Brandon Miller did this is why this is number 10. He would pretty much instantly be, according to the rest of that list, a Hall of Famer. Which I would like very much.
I mean, you know what his middle name is, right?
I don't. I've forgotten.
Brandon Jordan Miller. It's meant to be. It's meant to be. No, I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity to score and this season.
Do you think having LaMelo will help him score or hinder him by taking shots away? Like, I never know. Like, I don't have a clear idea yet. I've not seen enough playing together to know, like, would Ball have to stay healthy or to get hurt for this to happen?
I don't know. LaMelo's the type of player that I think will, if let's say Miller starts off hot, like goes 6 for 6 or something like that. I think LaMelo's going to find him. I really do. He's going to get him, keep it going. That LaMelo gives me that, his play style, it gives me that kind of feeling that he would feed a guy who's hot and help him get put up some numbers, honestly.
Well, look, I think this is definitely our spiciest one. It would be pretty historically significant. That's why it's number 10. But that is it for our 10 increasingly bold predictions. Hopefully we'll enjoy listening through there as we got a little bit more fire as we went through. Anything else to finally add here before we move on to our little Hornets gambling section here to end the pod?
Oh, no, let's get into it.
All right, so I don't know what sports books you have over there and what the different odds are and everything like that, but I'm just going to tell you right now.
I'm loading up my app right now.
I'm just going to tell you right now that what I have access to over here thinks that Miles Bridges is going to score more points per game this season than Brandon Miller. And the sports books don't have a clue. Like, I would be shocked if that was the case from everything we've heard Miles Bridges say, Brandon Miller say, everything we saw in preseason. Miles Bridges over under for the Houston game is 19.5, whereas I think Brandon Miller's was 17.5, which to me is a market inefficiency, let's say.
Yeah, like what do they know? Or what do they think they know? That's wild. I'm pulling up that game right now.
That is wild. And I honestly do not know. It doesn't make any sense to me.
FanDuel over here has Bridges over under at 19.5.
Yeah.
So they go.
So we have the same.
Yeah, LaMelo 23.5 over under, Bridges 19.5 over under, and then Brandon Miller 17.5. And then Josh Green. I'm gonna take the Josh Green under right now, honestly.
What is the Josh Green under?
No,
is
it's 7.5 over.
Okay.
That's tempting, Loki.
But I mean, straight away, like you can, I would be. I mean, I've bet the Miles Bridges under and the Brandon Miller over.
Yeah, I think
on both of those, because I think, look, whether this happened last year as well. I remember there was like some statistics. There was Brandon Miller assists, which they just got it wrong to start the season. It took them about 5 or 6 games to catch up and adjust. And once like they've caught up and adjust, the actual market inefficiency completely goes because they see what's happening. They have all these analysts who are crunching the numbers and the data. But right now, when they don't have that, they are not as tapped in as like people like me and you are. So there is definitely value right there. There is also value. Alperen Şengün to have a double-double. You can get.
Oh my
god!
Take the over rebounds. Like if he's gonna cook. He's gonna clean up on the glass.
He's gonna clean up on the glass, and he's gonna clean up inside in the post scoring as well.
Yeah.
Right. And you can get him at just under 2-1 for that. So yeah, that's another one that I have here going into tomorrow.
That's super solid. I see, like there was a stretch there last few seasons, right, where you could just pencil in whoever the Hornets were playing, whatever center they had was gonna clean up on the glass and definitely get up some points. And I never really considered it because sports gambling wasn't really a thing. But now it is. I'm going to consider it now. I'm excited to actually act on this stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think about Dylan Brooks under 2.5 first quarter points?
No, he gets them up. Dylan Brooks is like
just first quarter. It's first quarter.
Yeah, but he's thirsty. He'll be wanting to get his first shot, and he will shoot until he gets it. I think he'll want to. Yeah, but anyway, that's my hot take. Is right now, the sports books are looking at the points per game from last season and going, Miles Bridges was a 20-point per game scorer. We think he'll be that this year, and they are not taking into account anything that we know that he's going to be sacrificing, and that Bridges and Miller and Ball are going to be the two feature guys in offense. So I'm going to try and take advantage of that while I can. And this is my money. This is what I'm doing. I'm not advising anyone to do this, but I know some people like to listen to this stuff, and you are more than welcome to.
Yeah, not gambling advice at all, but LaMelo rebounds 5.5 over under.
Yeah,
the plus money's on the over.
I know. I looked at that. I looked at it. Yeah, it was definitely under consideration. But look, the way I realized, and look, this is the thing, right? Like, you're like, you've just been able to start sports gambling since March.
Right.
I've been able to sports gamble since I was 16 years old.
Fair.
It's like not regulated over here. Everyone does it.
Yeah.
What I've learned is the fun thing is to pick loads of things and bet loads of things. And that's where I've made my mistakes in the past. What I realized is the most efficient way financially is to find the one place where you know there is a market inefficiency and bet it heavy rather than betting lots of things.
Yeah.
Because then you just like win here, lose there, and you end up kind of like leveling out. If you just bet like one thing that you know is not right and bet that heavy, it's scarier because it carries more risk and you're more at risk. But it's I find it to be a more successful way of doing it. So that's why I've tried to avoid the LaMelo Ball over rebounds. I'm like, seems low, but equally, I feel like I know there's value elsewhere. There's a sense of chance with rebounds, whereas like some of the other stuff, it's more driven on game script.
Well, it's just funny though, because like the player rebound props, the Hornets list is LaMelo, Bridges, Miller, Josh Green, right? Not like no respect for Nick Richards. Not even.
I actually know what. That's because they don't know who's going to play center.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because they don't. Because Mark Williams hasn't been announced as out yet, and that's because the sports books don't want to put up a prop until they know who's playing. By game time, that might actually be up if Williams is announced as out. Mark Williams, that is. Anyway, we're coming up to an hour here. We don't want to keep you anymore. Any final thoughts before we head into the season here, Sam?
No, man, I'm excited for another season to start. Honestly, like I don't think I think this is an 11 seed at best, but I would love to be wrong. Like we're doing a weekly podcast. A weekly podcast is better when the team you're covering is good. Like I want that. I would love this team to be awesome, but I just don't think it's realistic. So be excited, be hopeful, but be realistic. You'll save yourself some headaches later.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's enjoy the journey, right? Let's get in line, enjoy watching the team, enjoy Eric and Dale. Let's have some positive
FanDuel
moments.
Sports TV, whatever it's called now.
FanDuel Sports TV. There you go, right there.
Rest in peace,
obviously, FanDuel, we are open to sponsoring the podcast. You just let us know. We'll sort you out. But no, Sam, I'm looking forward to jumping on here and chatting games, themes, trends, everything like that for the rest of the season. I'm going to tell you right now, I have a personal rule. You don't have to play to this rule, but it's my rule. I will not reference any like league standing stat until after 10 games. So like how is the defense looking? This is my personal rule. Just we can react to things that are happening, but I'm not going to be talking about the Hornets ranking something in the NBA for at least 10 games. And trust me, then I'll be coming out all firing with all the stats. But I try and hold myself back because that's where dangerous overreaction is going to happen.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally fair. Like same with standings. Like I want to let it breathe a little bit before we get too deep into that stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sam, where are you gonna watch the game? What's your plan? What's your plan for opening night?
Right in this chair. I'll be live streaming on YouTube, youtube.com/SamDracula.
Oh.
And,
well, that's where people should go check it out.
Yeah. I'll be watch me pray for LaMelo rebounds. I'll be watching for it. Like that's a tip. That's him. If him and Brandon Miller go for the same ball, like nah, bro, that's LaMelo's.
All right. Well, you can catch Sam on his YouTube channel. I'll be online. I'll be on X posting thoughts as we go along. But look, I posted this in my 5 Stings article in Hornets on SI today. The Hornets have had some extremely memorable opening nights. And to finish the podcast, I'm just going to read you out the last 6 opening nights and what happened at each of them. Strap in here because this is interesting. 2018, Kemba Walker dropped 41 points on the Milwaukee Bucks, and they lost by 1 point against Giannis. 2019, PJ Washington set an NBA record for most threes hit on his debut. He went 7-11 from 3, and the Hornets beat the Bulls by 1 point. 2020, Terry Rozier had 42 points in a 7-point loss to Cleveland. Again, incredible first game to the start of the season in terms of personal performance. In 2021, the Hornets blew a 25-point lead against Indiana, but went on to win by 3 in the end. LaMelo Ball had 32. In 2022, they beat the San Antonio Spurs by 27 points, the largest margin of victory in team franchise history on opening night. And in 2023, if you remember last year, they beat the Atlanta Hawks in a back-and-forth, tightly contested affair. Mark Williams had 15 rebounds. They beat them 116 to 110. And it was the first game of the barbecue series, which they managed to win. And there was so much positivity after the game last year with everybody looking pretty good with Mark Williams. So opening nights are always memorable. Let's hope the Houston one is another memorable game. And Sam, I will chat to you next week.
Sounds good.